Hello everybody, it's Mike here at Game from Scratch, and there's been a pretty major release in the open source world today. Krita, or Krita 4.0 was just released. Now apparently the pronunciation can go either way. I'm going to go with Krita. If you like Krita or some other pronunciation, I apologize. And I also apologize right up front. I am not a daily user of this application. Not because I have anything against it, I just don't find myself needing a paint program very often. And that's exactly what Krita is. It's probably the best free painting application available, and in some ways the best painting application available without that free caveat. So it is free and open source, and they've been really pushing the development in the last little while through Kickstarter campaigns, etc., and you've really seen the results. Krita has really developed at an accelerated rate over the last couple of years, getting animation support, and then in 4.0, some really impressive new features. So if you want to grab it, it's available at krita.org. Just go ahead and hit the download link. Now there is an option to buy it from the store, which will get automatic updates, etc., or you can go ahead and get it for free. If you want to support them, you know, they've got subscription options. You can pay for it, etc. Now, what's in this release? Well, it's actually very impressive. The biggest thing is vector support. Now, one thing to be aware of with vector support, however, is it is not backwards compatible. So Krita 3 and earlier applications did not have vector and text support, or the text support that they have now. So text and vector graphics will not work if you open a Krita 4 file in an earlier version. So pretty much commit to Krita 4 with your new projects going forward. You're going to have trouble opening these files in older versions, but that's pretty much to be expected. So without further ado, what's actually involved? Now, I did say right up front, I am incompetent with this program. I was going to come in here and I was going to show you exactly, you know, what's changed step by step, and then I realized I'm a bumbling idiot when it comes to using this application, so I will leave that for them to do. Now the nice thing is they've actually done a pair of videos. There's this one right here, which is about a 10-11 minute long step-by-step guide through all of the new features in. We're going to cover them very quickly going through this webpage, but if you want more details, do check out this video. I will throw it in the comments down below. And then on top of that, they also have a release video, which basically is a quick highlight with less detail of what is new in Krita. Again, I will link this down below. I do warn you, they picked some pretty awful background music, so you might want to mute this one before you play it, or at least turn the volume way down. So back to what's actually new in this. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Svg Graphics Format is definitely the biggest addition. SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. It's an open standard. W3C, the World Wide Web people, are basically the people that control that format. Krita will now support the 1.1 standard with 2 coming in the future. So this means you'll be able to use Krita to interrupt with other vector graphics applications such as, you know, Affinity Designer, Illustrator, Inkscape, etc. And vector graphics is basically a mathematical way of storing information as opposed to storing it pixel by pixel. So it allows you to do things like easy scaling, resizing, and that kind of stuff. It's a very nice way of doing non-destructive art creation, and it's a very different art flow. So now you can actually mix and match. So you can have your bitmap graphics and your SVG graphics kind of together in your Inkscape application. So they've also improved the UI tools around vector graphics, so kind of logical that way. And another thing that came from this, and the nice thing about switch to vector graphics, is they got vastly improved text tools. The text tools in Krita before were pretty awful, if I'm honest. Now it's pretty easy, you know, basically if you want to place text, color it, and move it around, resize it, etc. It's a heck of a lot easier now in Krita than it used to be. They also added Python scripting, so now you're going to start seeing a lot more plugins coming along. And on the topic of plugins, there are actually quite a few out there already. There's also a manager for handling the various different plugins that are written in Python. So if you want to extend it, you can now do so via this Python interface, and there are tools for managing it, and a couple of new Python plugins have already been released. Next up, they added a colorized mask tool. This is basically for inking line drawing. And again, if you're interested in learning more, I will link this entire release note here, but they have a video showing it in action. Another thing that they've done is basically added background saving. So they've moved saving into a background thread, so it's not going to bring your document to a complete and utter halt while it's doing a background save. You know, nice usability change there. New KPL color palette format and an improved palette docker. And on that same topic, they've also created a new brush editor that is a lot smoother. Basically, the big thing here, though, is as you're tweaking and changing things, you can actually see a real-time preview of how your brush is going to work. So for creating custom brushes, this is a much smoother interface now in the new version. On top of that, we've got performance improving with multi-threaded brushes. You got larger brush options, and you've got masked brushes. You got a lot more options on how you basically define how your brush is going to work. So you can see here a watercolor effect being done using masking on a brush. They've also updated the brush presets. Yeah, pretty much. We got another option down here, and this one's really nice actually for pixel artists, is there is now a fat grid. So if you zoom in past 800% zoom, you will actually see the actual pixels you are working on. So again, this is critical to pixel artists, and there's actually corresponding pixel brushes. Now another thing of interest to game developers is going to be the new isometric grid. So if you're working in an isometric art style, you can set up a grid in the background and actually keep your proportions right, you know, make things a lot easier, smoother to actually create that isometric art style. And obviously you can set the angle that the grid is drawn at, so you can match your actual isometric style perfectly. They improved the pop-up palette, painting insistence improvement, filter improvement. You can now resize the thumbnails in the Docker and the showing brush sizes, improved warnings, and a new darker theme. So if you're really into the dark movement, you can go in here now, go to settings, themes, and go from dark, like so, to darker. Now myself, actually, I'm not a huge fan of dark themes. I know they're all the rage right now, but the nice thing is, as you saw earlier on, you can also go bright. So if you're like me, work sometimes out in the actual sunlight, you can see this guy on your screen. But definitely a nice improvement. They are very smooth, and you see the interface in general is just polished and clean. So if you haven't used Krita since 2.x versions, you got to come back and check it out because the interface is just so much cleaner. The performance is very, very solid. Again, we've got that fat bit support, so if you're a pixel artist, you get the actual, that granularity or level detail that you actually need to work with. And I think that's about it, other than a whole bunch of bug fixes. But across the board, it is a great release for Krita. I can't do justice for these new features, as I mentioned very early on, so I will link those two videos and the release notes down below if you want more information. So let me know, are you using Krita already? Do you pronounce it Krita, Krita, or some other way? Let me know down below. I've never actually heard a consistent pronunciation, so I am probably mangling it every time I say it. And that's where I will leave it. I hope you found that useful. I will see you all later. Goodbye.